Billie Jo, for joining us. Um, Always a pleasure to have you, and thank you also for taking the time to share your thoughts and experiences. So welcome.
Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Perfect. So, Billie Jo, let me ask you this, just in terms of introduction for any of our viewers, I know you have decades of experiences in making positive changes and impacts on customer experiences at a lot of your client and your employer organizations in the past. Can you talk a little bit about sort of your background and your experiences in this domain?
Sure. Thank you. Yes, I've had actually over 20 years of experience in just, I'll call it general leadership, most of which has been in customer service and business support, marketing support type groups. I had the opportunity most recently with my last 10 to 12 years of experience in the building products industry to really help, I will say, initially just develop and map the entire customer journey for a large organization, and then really help prioritize and advance improvements in that customer journey over the last 6 to 7 years. So it's really been wonderful to see not only the experience improvements for the customer, but also the advancements that the organization has made in total in terms of its just overall customer experience maturity.
Perfect. So, can you talk about a day in your life as an executive that has been charged with making positive changes to the customer's experience?
Sure. I will say, the last couple of years, a day in the life is really twofold. My role has been wearing both hats in terms of managing some day to day, both customer service and, as I mentioned, some indirect marketing business support groups. And so on occasion, as you know, you're touching base with your team, you're helping develop leaders, remove some obstacles, and make sure day-to-day types of service and things were being managed. On the customer experience side, most of that was around more collaboration and project prioritization with a broader team of leaders, but then working cross-functionally with leaders to actually execute and implement the projects that the business had deemed most important for our customers. So it was quite a few meetings, planning, both in terms of prep and strategy and roadmap, but also then in terms of actual tangible execution. We might be partnering with a software partner on the outside because we had to advance technology, or we might be developing some internal software and enhancements because we needed to improve the experience, from an inside technology perspective. So it was fairly broad, but each project had its project charter, business case, timeline, plan, and budget, and that would take a majority of my time.
Right. So, Billie Jo, in your past experiences, when your leadership, when they said, "Hey, this was a great job," what are they typically counting, or what were they typically counting on you for?
I will say first and foremost, it would be to, at a larger, more strategic perspective, help the organization truly define and develop the strategy and the roadmap for customer experience priorities across the organization. That is what they looked to me to help do, to guide. We had very, I'll call it strict and detailed priority objectives that we would use, to make sure that we were putting in front of the business the most impactful in terms of ROI. Perhaps it was going to increase sales or increase brand loyalty, or at the same time, hopefully reduce complexity internally and drive productivity and cost savings internally while improving the experience externally. So definitely helping to define the strategy. The next thing I would say, to effectively manage resources. And so it was my job to help make sure, were we prioritizing correctly for the business? And then did we have, again, resources from either IT support, internal business resources that had to support a project implementation, and just really aligning those resources to stay on time and on budget per our commitment to the business. Next, I will say, I would be held accountable to drive the collaboration and a broad understanding across the organization about the projects. This is what we're going to do. These are the resources dedicated. And now let's make sure that everyone is informed and kept up to date on how those projects were progressing, when they were having a customer impact, and making sure the executive team and other stakeholders really understood a clear vision of how we were performing. And then lastly, I would say just results, making sure that we were clearly reporting the results, whether it was an impact to metrics or, again, a longer term improvement out in the field, but that we could truly define that and show that to the business as results.
Wonderful. I've had a lot of guests on this channel talk about KPIs and metrics. And I know those are important. Before we double click on those, I wanted to also explore a little bit on your experiences with customer journey research, customer journey mapping as a tool. I know you have significant experiences over there. Can you talk a little bit about, just your work in customer journeys and why you leverage that format versus, other formats that are available when it comes to impacting the customer experience positively?
Sure. I will say my experience most recently, about 7 years ago, we actually partnered with an outside firm. Mulberry Consulting was the name at the time. And they came in to really help us step back as a business and more methodically, and detailed a step-by-step process of why it's important to map the customer journey. I think a lot of us across the business felt like we knew what was important to the customer just from our lens, but we weren't looking at it more holistically as the whole organization, having the dialogue together cross-functionally to really understand how each function impacted the customer experience along the whole journey. Again, because of our siloed perspectives, we tended to only look at what happened while our team was impacting the customer, but we had a hard time looking at it from a broader perspective, end to end, whether that be an in-store experience or retail experience, an online experience. Everyone had a different perspective. So I think the largest reason for us to do something more structured, like a customer journey map, was to make sure that we were all aligned and hearing it all together at the same time. And we really had impressive results, helping the organization understand, what happens end to end, and even understanding those experiences. Many of our cross-functional leaders didn't know what happened at invoicing, or what happens at delivery, or what happens when they get stuck on a particular stage of the process.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, because time and time again, I've heard a lot of our clients and a lot of experts in the field also talk about how sometimes, I remember the phrase one of my clients used, which is, sometimes we start drinking our own Kool-Aid,
Yes.
so much that's where that external perspective, especially if it's end to end across the whole customer journey, then really deep diving into that makes a lot of difference. So I get the sense that that's what drove you and your company as well to focus on this tool.
Yes, it really did.
Perfect. Can you talk a little bit about how you implemented that project? Because I know you were focusing on different facets of your business, but can you talk about just in terms of implementing that journey research project, what you did, what were some of the things that you encountered?
Sure. So, coming out of some of our initial consulting meetings and broader cross-functional leadership meetings, I was asked then to come back and, really take pen to paper and map it more detailed. In our first discussions cross-functionally, we were fairly high level. But then that was my responsibility, was to come back and, come back with some detailed maps at every stage of really truly what happens, because some of that took some research to do. We just couldn't be in a room and map it all. We had to go and do some homework and bring it back to the organization, which is what I did. That took several months, because we have several brands at the time, quite a few different distributions of shipment and different channels out in the market to serve. And so it was a different experience in each of those cases, which needed to be mapped out. We chose to just do detailed Visio maps, and it really helped our organization see it in a more technical way, and in terms of the journey. Then we involved our customers to identify what of these 12 stages, if it were, which ones of those are most important. Is it invoicing, or is that not as important as order detail and order acknowledgement, quality of product, pricing, and the delivery? So from all of that came really those key moments of truth and what was most important at the touch points, which is then where we were able to shift and put it into a strategic roadmap of what comes first. Where do we have the biggest gaps, both in terms of what our customer said was most important, but we weren't performing well, either to their view or maybe competitively? And where did we need to make the largest impact first? And so that really helped set the strategy for our organization and the priority initially of what we were going to work on first. And then we've just evolved it ever since.
That's great. So what I heard you say was focusing on the customer journey and leveraging mapping as a tool. This almost resulted in you getting like a blueprint for success, or a pathway.
Absolutely. Yes.
Perfect. Billie Jo, what was the result for your company overall and for your department, in sort of understanding this whole customer journey and identifying all of the insights that you got? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I would say on a broad organizational level, it was transformational for our business. From that perspective, and why I say that, it became our new mission and vision statement. And we embedded it in all of our material. Again, that could have been perceived as internal, and yet it was externally, because we knew we needed to make it easier at the primary stages. In this terms, it was kitchen and bath cabinets, but making it easier to do business with us in the shop, sell, and buy stages of the journey. And so that became our mission statement. Now, granted, there might be 20 points of contact, but we did try to simplify it so that we could get alignment and get the entire organization, as well as our customers, to truly understand that that's what we were focused on, and to demonstrate value to our customers. And so that really helped us, I believe, transform the organization. We were very strong operationally, and had a lot of basics and foundation, but this was now more of the newer strategy and the growth path, to demonstrate that we were really focused on the customer.
That's great to know. A lot of times what I've seen clients do is they spend a lot of time in doing the research and in mapping it, but then sometimes there are gaps in execution, or there are gaps otherwise, or there are just improvements that they feel that they can make, if they had another shot at it. Is there anything that you feel that, going back or in the future, whenever you do your next journey mapping project, are there any improvements that you think you'll make reflecting on this experience?
I definitely would. I think there's a few things. One is, while we involved the customer, we probably didn't have them involved as early in the process as we should have. We tended to probably think that we had enough internal experts that knew and could speak for the customer, but you can never really speak for the customer. You need to let them speak for themselves. And so we found that to be true. And I think I would approach that a little bit more differently. And it might take longer, but I would probably do that a little differently next time. Whereas we got them involved, but maybe later after we had formed some theories and some ideas. Also, I would say it might be wiser to go deeper into the organization. So we had cross-functional leaders, but maybe should have actually gotten to the source of where the work gets done and really allow for, because I think longer term, Nitin, that would have allowed for better employee engagement and making sure that we kept an eye on the employee experience along the way, because that goes hand in hand with improving the customer experience. And had we made sure of their involvement and their ability to ask questions or say, well, have you thought about this? Yes, we want to improve the experience, but have you thought about it internally, maybe the complexity or the process change that would require? We learned lessons along the way and might have tweaked things, but it would have been more helpful to have them involved.
That's a very astute point, Billie Jo, that you've raised, because that is something we see a lot in our practice as well.
Mm-hmm.
Where sometimes we'll get clients presenting, journey maps that they've done in the past. And, these are very nice visuals and infographics, and they're labeled as customer journey map. And in the course of, evaluating the work that has been done, we often ask, okay, so how many customers did you involve? And like you said, at what stages, right?
Right.
And often, I don't say sometimes, I'll say often, more frequently than we would like, the answer that we get is, we had this department or this executive talk about the customer because they have decades of experience dealing with these types of customers. And like you said, while it's a good representation, it's not reflective of the voice of the customer. In fact, our consulting to then clients is, then this image or this map that you have, it's not a customer map. It's not a customer journey map. Let's take the word customer out, and maybe it's a process map. Or maybe it's an internal representation of the customer map. Whatever it is, it's not a customer journey map because, like you said, there's that proxy angle going on, which is not the same.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Wonderful. Well, I'm at the end of, the questions that I had for you, but I think you've given a lot of great insights and a lot of these nuggets of wisdom that you've shared, especially in terms of, what I'm taking away is getting the customer involved, not having a proxy for the customer. And the earlier that the sentiment and the voice of the customer can be integrated into developing a journey map, the better it is.
Yes.
Any final comments or any additional thoughts that you have before we end?
The only other thing, Nitin, I think oftentimes I'm asked, what roadblocks did we have along the way, or, what challenges in terms of advancing the journey and really having an impact. I will say probably one of the things that we wrestled with the most would be competing or conflicting priorities. And I think, within any organization that's going to happen because business is changing, the world is changing, customers' needs are changing as you're trying to implement, in some cases, very large scale projects. And so, we learned as well, we needed to be more agile and try to get more short, quick wins and bursts and demonstrate those wins to the business so that we could continue to get the support in improving the journey along the way. So I think businesses are going to run into conflicts and other priorities may come up, but you have to be able to kind of navigate your way through that and keep moving toward those improvements.
Perfect. Well, thank you. I keep saying this in a lot of interviews, but I keep saying perfect because that really reflects, how you're sort of nailing it, and you have, the key points that we recommend to our clients as well. So I think this was great. Thank you for taking the time to share your experiences I think anybody watching this will get some good insights on how they can approach their customer experiences and also leverage customer journey mapping as a tool to help achieve their goals. So thank you again, Billie Jo.
Yes, thank you, Nitin.